We emailed over 600 people to collect these questions. We are going to start with alphabetical order. My first question is for you, Laura. Laura, you're a mother of three. Do you have any advice for women who took a break after becoming a mom and want to return to the same level of seniority?
I haven't taken a break. I went out on maternity leave when I had my children, but I didn't leave the workforce. I just took the maternity leave. But I would say try not to worry too much about coming back with the exact same senior title. Come back to something that you're passionate about, that you can really lean into, and I think good things will come, versus worrying about coming back at the exact same level. Because things change if you're out of the workforce for a few years, and it's not bad to come in and get your feet wet, relearn how to be a mom and a worker or an executive. And because it is a new thing in your environment that you may not have had before if you hadn't had any children, had children, and then decided to step away from work. And there's many companies that have fantastic on-ramping programs just for women who are deciding to go back into the workforce. So I would say, go back to something that you're passionate about, that you can lean into, so it's not a stress and an onus. And then the goodness will come with that, whether that's your senior title again, managing a team, or just knowing that, being an individual contributor and being a mom and doing what I love is actually a fantastic combination.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. My next question is for you, Pat. Pat, you have coached many different people from different walks of life. What are some differences you have observed between men in leadership and women in leadership?
Oh, that's a very complex question, because I don't really look for the differences between them. My style of coaching, being ontologically based, is to look at people's beingness. And that's about who we be while we're doing what we're doing. And I guess my own personal bias is that I feel that generally women bring more, naturally bring more emotional intelligence to the workplace. Perhaps we, the majority of us, perhaps, I think it's hard to use general terms because there's always exceptions, but I think we have some understanding of perhaps more than some men if there's a sick child. But I also know that now in this generation that parents really parent equally in so many situations. So I would say our natural tendencies, I think women tend to, if I look at women in our society or our broad society, I think we tend to gather people around us more. We're more like, let's get together and talk this out. We're more collaborative, generally speaking. So I would say that generally, I would go that way. I think that one of the challenges as a woman in senior leadership is to have the confidence and the self-esteem, regardless of who's in the room, whether the CEO's in the room with you, or it's a room full of men who are expert in their field, or women who are expert in their field, to be able to state your truth and your knowledge as an expert in your field, and be confident in doing that. And so for me, that's what's most important, is to have that confidence and self-esteem and the knowledge that you're well researched and well prepared, and you can represent your point of view regardless of the gender. Thanks for that challenging question, Avijit. I'll have an easier one next time. Thank you.
Definitely, Pat. Confidence and self-esteem are the key. Thank you. Our next question is for you, Sarah. Sarah, you have worked in both NVIDIA, a multinational company, and Zoox, a fast-growing autonomous vehicle company. What differences in leadership you have experienced in these two environments? Sarah.
Yeah, they're all good and tough questions. So I think the thing that I admire about so many leaders at NVIDIA is, and it's really sort of like from the top, from Jensen, right? Like the mission is the boss. There is no politics. There is no, this is my agenda. There is only one agenda. And when I see that, I mean, it's really sort of like played out by everyone, right? Like every peer of mine, every person that I'm interacting with, the project that we do here, we're doing AV also at NVIDIA, right? It's spread across so many organizations, and yet we can pull them all together and they can all sort of deliver because they understand what we're trying to do. And that's something actually very unique, right? Like, I don't know, I don't think this is a multinational versus a small company thing. It's just an NVIDIA thing. I really appreciate it. I think the part about a small, fast company was how quickly people can make decisions sometimes, and be able to just pivot and say, okay, well, nope, we're not doing that. We're all doing this. There is no customer. We are the customer. Like, we can do whatever. At some point, you run out of money, but in the meantime, you can sort of really try to figure out what is your fastest path and try to execute on that. So it's a little bit different, right? Like, obviously, trying to coordinate amongst thousands of people can take a little bit longer.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Pat, the next question is for you. What should working women do now to be the leader of tomorrow? What should the working woman do now to be the leader of tomorrow?
Well, I think one of the most important things as a leader is to always be learning, continuous learning, because I feel that nowadays in 6 months, we can be totally irrelevant in the workplace. So we're just as good as the last project we completed, whether we were on budget, on time, who was on our team, were we liked, do people want to work with us on the next project that we're given? And I think that we're continuously learning, and that's what keeps us sharp. It keeps us engaged with our field of expertise. I think it's so valuable to sit and have discussion with people that work in our same field with opposing views. Like, so often I've said to my staff, if we all agree in this room, most of us are redundant. We don't have to be here. I want different views in this room so that we can create the best solution. And that means that we all have to be researching, we need to be looking at the latest and greatest, and we have to be willing to present options that are not the cutting edge, because cutting edge has already been done. But what's on the bleeding edge? That's where we have to be out in front of the cutting edge, because cutting edge is just every day. That's already established. So we have to be willing to be able to explain why this would work and why we want to go there to somebody that maybe has the final sign off on the project, for example, the CEO. And so I think that continuously learning, but also to keep building our own communication skills, however we do that, to practice being in more demanding environments so that we keep stretching and growing and using our brains to present those challenging projects. And one of the things that my career has turned me into is a lobbyist, and I get a hold of an idea and gosh, I'm just not willing to give it up. If I think it's a really good idea, I can be very patient and very persistent. And I think that there's a place for that. I think there's also a time when we have to say, okay, it's time to move on. That's had its day and it's no longer relevant. But if there's something that's a gem that you're really committed to, and you know in your heart and soul it's got value, just talk to people around the decision makers sometimes. Just start and chip away at it and lobby and listen for when people start talking about your idea as though it's their idea, and then go home and celebrate.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. As you said, continuous learning is the key. Our next question is for you, Sarah. Sarah, even highly qualified women hesitate to ask for a promotion. How will you encourage women to speak up? How will you encourage women to speak up?
Yeah. And like something that Pat said, you always have to know, it doesn't matter, oh, it's your boss or it's a room full of people that maybe know more. you have to cultivate that that ability to be able to say no, but but this is the right thing, right? Like this is what I think is needed. And so you're doing that every day. You have to be doing that every day in a project, in a meeting, and so forth. And same, cultivate that relationship with your your manager. And so it's not a once a year, let me remind you of everything that I've done. It's a continuous, right? Like, this is the guidance that I've gotten from you. Here are the things that I'm doing. Hey, by the way, like you asked me to do this, I did this, and I'm also doing this other stuff. Just wanted to let you know, like if you have feedback. And so this should be a continuous thing, such that your manager is sort of like looking at you as like the person that they cannot live without, they cannot replace, right? So all of that is this foundation that you have to be building. And then, right, like, yes, right, I'm doing all this great work, you're telling me I'm doing, and so, I'm thinking I'm already operating at this next level. And so next cycle, which by the way, I know it's not right now, next cycle in 6 months, I feel like I'm already there. What are you thinking? I feel like if you are waiting too long, and it's that like evaluation time and the promotion didn't come, and you're like, but I was expecting it and I did all this great work, you have no idea, like this is such a tough conversation, right? So don't let it get to that place.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, like we have to constantly talk to our bosses or our managers and inform them what is happening with us. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is for you, Laura. Laura, in your career path, was there a turning point or obstacle you overcame that made you what you are today?
Wow. Lots of them, to be honest. I mean, my entire career is shaped by wins and obstacles and biases as being a woman early in high tech environment in the 90s, being non-engineering, female in a male dominated engineering world. Finding my voice was probably when I knew that I had turned the corner, and had the confidence to challenge people, ask probing questions, influence people more senior than me. Those were major turning points for me. And having a seat at the table, getting invited to meetings that I hadn't been invited to prior, even when I wasn't in a senior role or a senior capacity, because people valued my opinion, and that gave me some of the confidence that I lacked early on in my career, to be honest. So and positive milestones were big promotions and things like that were always really great, but it was more of the challenges that you learn from than the successes. And the continuous learning thing, I could not agree more, Pat, is so critical. And you're going to learn more from your mistakes than you are from your successes.
Thank you, Laura. As you said, mistakes are something which we learn from. We learn so much from our mistakes. Our next question is for you, Sarah. Sarah, what advice can you share with women that are in the start of their careers? What advice can you share with women that are in the start of their careers?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, always try to find something that motivates and excites you, right? Like, you're not doing this because it's a job. I mean, yes, of course we are. And yes, of course, right? Like, we have to earn, but wouldn't it be fabulous if you're spending all of this time and you're actually like, yes, this is fun, or like, or there's a reason, right? Like, for me, I'm doing something that adds value for people, right? Like, it's making a positive impact. And yes, I'm like, if my day is tough or my week has been tough or whatever, right? Like, I can go back and remind myself, like, why the heck am I doing this? So that's one part. The other one is add value yourself, right? Like, you're not looking, all the rest of the goodness follows, right? Promotions and whatever, but are you doing the thing that the organization needs? And I think for me, the trait that I value so much and I try to have in myself is ownership, right? Like, I'm not just delivering a small thing by itself. Whatever it is that we are trying to achieve, that is what I own, and I have to make sure that whatever the component, the little cog that is my piece, how does it fit in, and then how do I help the people that use it? How do I help the people that, right, like, are on the sides of it? Like, how do I help this produce value in the end, right? Like, what what I think doesn't go well, or at least, right, like I've never appreciated when people do this is, well, you know, I was just supposed to do this MR and I don't really care whether like it helps or not. Like my job is done because I did the thing that was asked of me. That's not enough, right? Like what you're trying to do is make something successful. And so figure out how to do that. And then from there, you are indispensable, right? Like you are that person that like everybody is expecting will jump in and see the bigger picture and solve the bigger picture.
Thank you, Sarah. It's all about adding value. Thank you for sharing that. The next question is for you, Laura. Laura, how did you navigate power structures early in your career versus later in your career when you had more formal leadership role?
I didn't understand the first part of the question. How did I navigate
Power structures early in
power
your
structure?
career? Yes.
Great question. It goes back to sort of earning your seat at the table and staying educated, staying on top of your craft, staying on top of the technology that you're, in my case, that I would be bringing to market from a marketing perspective. And so that you're constantly adding value at every level. You know, you're going to run into people with sharp elbows that are going to try and knock you down and around a little bit. And I think getting yourself up and just continuing to show that you have that voice, that you're capable, you're competent, you're trustworthy, they can count on you. You know, it usually takes care of itself. You're always going to run into power struggles where there's going to be folks who have agendas. And like Sarah said, I love NVIDIA because I've seen zero of that since I've been here. You know, Jensen really has created a very nice culture where the power struggles aren't there any longer, or aren't there at all. You know, at Cisco, I was there for, 25 years. And, depending on leadership, we had different, forms of power struggles. And you just have to sort of get your nose in it, roll up your sleeves. Don't be afraid to do junior work. Don't be afraid to have a senior idea. Just, get in there and be part of the team. And I think that the politics sort of go away when people really see the good work that you can do.
Thank you, Laura. As you said, voicing our voice is one of the most important things which we can do. My next question is for you, Pat. Pat, influencing without authority is a critical competency. How can we develop that skill?
Well, I think the first obvious answer for me is to work in a field, for example, if you lead a group of volunteers in the community, that's a great place to practice. For example, I sat on a board of a women's transition house, and we saw that there was a need in the community. There were 13 of us on the board, looking around our community and saying that there was actually a gap in the community for older women. We had shelters for young moms and their families if they were in an abusive situation to go for safety, but we didn't have shelters for older women. And so the 13 of us each signed $1 million guarantee loan to build a shelter for older women in our community. And so I think that we have to stick our necks out. And like, I didn't have $1 million, but I signed the guarantee, as did 12 other people. But when we have a sense of conviction and we move forward with confidence, people also trust us when we trust ourselves and when we believe in ourselves. And I was thinking, as Laura and Sarah were sharing some of their experiences in the workplace, that one of my greatest experiences in being able to lead a team, the very first lesson for me after many years of trying to do this effectively was that I discovered quite by accident that I first had to believe in myself. And that was the hardest lesson. When I got to that point where I went, you know what, I'm a really good leader and people want to work with me. And I was willing to accept that and own it and state it and live it. Then everything changed, because then people did want to work with me, did want to be with me, did want to be on the teams, whether it was paid or unpaid work. And I had the privilege, the last corporate environment that I worked in with a large team, we called ourselves the dream team. we were as diverse as could be in skills and training and output and thought processes, personalities, but that's what made us powerful. And we had so much respect and space for one another. And so I think that those are some of the elements. First, self-belief and self-confidence, then other people want to be with you. And then making space for all that diversity, because that's where the strength really is, excuse me. And embracing that for what each person brings. Not, I think there's a lot of weakness when we're all cookie cutter the same, and we will miss many things when we look at a project if we're all the same. So I love to embrace that. And of course, I had the good fortune to work for many years in the field of human rights and diversity, also in the workplace. So it's part of my purpose in life. And the other part is to always do something that you're passionate about. I made a promise to myself 30 years ago that I would never live with anything or have anything around me or do work that I did not love. And that never did me wrong. I always ended up in positions that I loved. I had people around me that I loved. I lived in homes that I loved. I have friends that I love. The possessions that I have are things that I love. I don't have something that I like. And so that made a big difference in my life. So I encourage each one of you to, it's not about how much we have, but it's what we do with what we've got, and that we have things that we love. The feeling to look around and look at a painting on the wall and say, I love that. Not, oh, I'm going to change that next year. But it all feeds us in feeling good about ourselves and being authentic and being true to who we are in our core. And I think that's where our real power comes from. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. It starts with self-belief. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is for you, Laura. Laura, in the moments of stress or turmoil, how do you focus on the matter at hand? In the moments of stress and turmoil, how do you focus on the matter at hand?
Well, I try to take the emotion out of it first, and so that I can have a clear head and thinking about what really needs to be done. Most stressful and turmoil situations aren't life and death in my world. And I have to remind myself that no one's going to die if I don't get this next decision correct, or I make a wrong move. We're not on the operating table here. So I try to take the emotion out of it. If I am emotional, I have a rule that I can't send an email until the next day, because I might say something in writing that I might regret while in an emotional state. So I try to just base it on the facts, figure out what a good path forward would be. Use my mentors and others around me as sounding boards to say, am I crazy, or is this kind of the right next steps for something like a situation that's so stressful for me may not be stressful for someone else, and they can give you sort of that sound advice and be that good sounding board. But really just knowing that no one's going to die here. We're going to make some decisions, and we're going to learn from them either way, and we're going to help move the team, the project, the obstacle, the stressful situation forward.
Thank you, Laura. The first step is taking the emotion out of it. I have a follow-up question to that. How has mentorship helped you grow as a leader?
Oh, it's been super important. I've had both male and female mentors. Mentors I've asked to be a mentee to, and folks who have just taken me under their wing, and it has been invaluable. And I think in general, having a network, belonging to lots of different groups outside of your own core team, finding mentors or people that you can learn from, because trust me, I think they learn from you too. So it's a very good bi-directional relationship if you find a good mentor or many mentors.
Thank you, Laura. It's always good to have mentors. I totally agree with that. Our next question is for you, Pat. Pat, do you have any pointers for women on how to navigate workplace relationships with colleagues? Do you have any pointers on how to navigate workplace relationships with colleagues?
I would start by saying that naturally I'm fairly shy. And so I'm not the person that's the first one to step forward and say, hi, nice to meet you. I'll get on an elevator and ride with somebody. And unless they look directly at me, I may not speak to them just because of my natural shyness. But I think for me, respect is absolutely critical. And then as soon as you have an opportunity to build trust with somebody, and the first part of that for me also is to be able to see the person, to see them doing what they do of value and acknowledging it. Then it's also my crutch because I'm shy and I don't know what to say to them. I'm awkward socially sometimes. But if I see somebody doing a good job, I think, oh, I'm going to tell them that that was great, or I really appreciate it, or tell me how that works. Because there's some things that happen in the workplace that I can learn from and learn about, but also that I'm just curious about. And so to be curious about what they're doing from a very genuine place, to respect what they do and have space for their opinions and let them know that, and to then build trust with them so that you can work and fall into that relationship. I think the other thing that falls out of those traits is to be able to delegate with whoever you're working with and get your hands off. I'm not a micromanager. I am a strategic thinker. So I'm always way out here thinking, oh, we could do this and we could build that. And oh, in 5 years, this would be fantastic. So that's my gift. And I need those people around me that are going to look after the details. And so appreciating all of those differences that we bring and seeing them and valuing them. Catch people doing great jobs, be curious about them, embrace the differences, build the trust, and acknowledge people for who they are.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate what they bring to the table. Thank you. That's a great message for us. Sarah, the next question is for you. What personal skills did you develop so you could improve as a leader? What personal skills did you develop so you could improve as a leader?
So I think a couple that I believe have helped me the most, right? Like, one is just being able to really understand and empathize with people, and be able to, right, like, sort of figure out where they're coming from, bring them to the table. Something that Pat was talking about earlier, right? And the question that you asked her, many times leadership is not, you're reporting directly to me, and so that doesn't really matter. I will tell you and you will do it, right? Like, leadership is about, you don't report to me. And in fact, right, like, my power comes from my ability to be able to understand you, to explain myself to you, and to convince you, actually, this is a great idea. And, what's in it for you, right? Like, why should you want to sign up, and why should you want to be part of this team, this effort, whatever it might be. The other part that I think is important is, try to put it, right, like, if I'm asking somebody to put in 80% or whatever, I have to be putting in 110%, right? Like, if I'm saying, hey, you have to do this, well, I have to meet them there, right? Like, I have to be even more dedicated, even more involved. I cannot lead while I'm sort of like in the back seat, like not doing any work and expecting other people, right? So if and why? Because one, you really need to understand what's going on. It's not to micromanage them, but it's, right, like, in order to provide value, you need to be engaged. But the other one is just, right, like, you have to build that trust with people, where they're like, yeah, I know, I've seen you, I know that you deliver value, and now I feel like, yes, I can trust you, and I respect you, right? And I think that has, for me, come from, like, well, I've done it before and I'm working just as hard.
Thank you, Sarah. As a leader, we have to give 110%. Now I have a follow-up question for you on that. How do you balance your career, personal life, and passions?
That is tough, right? Like, and at the end, you sort of have to say, what is the thing that matters the most to me on at any point in my life. And again, right, like you have to be super clear with yourself, right? Okay, this is my priority list. This is what I need to do. And yeah, if I'm feeling like, oh, things are not going well, okay, well, let me go back, right? Like I said, I want this job. I said I am going to sign up for it, and I know it's going to be tough, and I'm going to like put this XYZ on the back burner. Hobby, blah blah blah, is not going to happen these couple of years because I'm signing up for that project. So I went into it open-eyed, and now, right, like sort of like own that decision. There's not a perfect, right, like balance that I found, at least, between I'll get everything that I wanted. I have, right, like all my free time and all my hobbies and all the time with my kid and all of this work that I really, really want to do, right? And so I have to say, right, like, okay, this is what I absolutely cannot live without this amount of personal free time that I just need to recover. And I need to have this much time with my child. And then I'm going to sign up for, okay, this is all the passion that I'm going to put in the rest of my work.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a wonderful advice. Having some time to recuperate is very important. But my next question is for you. If you had the opportunity to do your career again, what would you do differently? If you had the opportunity to do your career again, what would you do differently?
Thanks, Abhijit. Actually, there's very little that I would do differently. I loved the career that I had in learning and development and as part of an HR and organizational development process. And I started out as a classroom instructor and built curriculum, and then started running the departments. I trained trainers, and I loved every minute of my work. I really can say that. I guess the one thing, if I had to pick one thing, it would have been that I would have been honest with myself earlier as a younger person, because I knew that I loved to train. I trained 4-H'ers with horses. I was always teaching. That was just something that I gravitated to as a child. I was showing people how to do things, and yet I resisted that because I was so shy when I was a young adult. But, as I got into education, and what I discovered, that as I was taking courses in adult education and getting my career, my instructors and my professors were I would walk into the class, and I remember this one professor saying to me, "Why are you in my class? You should be teaching this class." And he was a professor that I had quite often. And yet, I was there to learn. And one of the most powerful instructors I had he was autistic, and he was way on the scale, somewhere on this scale as it goes. And he could not write or read, and he had a PhD, and he was a brilliant instructor because he could explain anything. And what I found, because I'm a kinesthetic learner, and he could explain things and get me to feel them. And he would say, "Just trust your gut. What would you do next?" And so he taught me so much. And I think of his instruction, and if I would have had that earlier, I think I would have been in my chosen passionate field earlier by maybe 10 years. Sorry for the long way around.
Thank you, Pat, for sharing that. It's really important that we be honest with ourselves, or understand what our passions are and follow them. Laura, my next question is for you. Have you been in a situation where others believed in you, but you did not believe in yourself? If yes, how did you overcome that?
Yes, for sure. Trusting others, who maybe more than myself in that moment, trying to understand and see what they saw in me that I wasn't seeing in me, taking a bit of a leap of faith that if others believe in me, then I should be believing in myself, knowing that I had a fantastic group around me who did believe in me, that it was almost a safety net. So, you know, if I didn't step up exactly how they thought I could, I also knew that they wouldn't have put me in a position where they would have, you know, chastised me if I didn't succeed. So a lot of it is that confidence and just, you know, being able to, you know, grab the bull and say, I'm going to do this, and continue to work and leverage the people around you so that you can actually, you know, build the confidence while you're building the airplane, while it's flying, and keep it moving forward. So, you know, when people around you trust you, that's a huge thing. And don't take that for granted, because that's not always going to happen. Sometimes you do have to fake it till you make it. And when people around you don't know if you can do it, and you don't know if you can do it, but, you know, definitely leverage that network.
Thank you, Laura. I like that. Create your safety net. My next question is for you, Sarah. Sarah, what was the turning point in your career which you think made you what you are today? What was the turning point in your career which you think made you what you are today?
I think, yeah, my whole career, I suppose, has been one of lots of change. And it's funny, right? Like I look back and think, wow, if I didn't make that decision or that didn't happen, then maybe this happens for everybody, right? Like I could have gone in so many different directions. And so I think the constant for me has always been being able to take that leap of faith and say, I am going to go do something different because I want to, and I think it will be great in the end, but it's going to be uncomfortable, and maybe I'm going to be out of my depth, and, you know, maybe people don't know me anymore. And so I have to build all this trust again, right? And I, you know, sort of have to learn stuff. And so, you know, maybe when you're younger, it's both good and bad, right? Like you don't have that whole repository of things that you've learned. It's easier to embrace this change. And as you get more and more senior, I've been fighting maybe with myself, right? Like, no, I can still do it. I can still leave it all behind and like do something else because I know in a year it will be fine. So no single turning point, but I think every time I've done that, it has taught me something very valuable. And I've been able to like grow in ways that I before didn't have any expectation of. So, I mean, even right, like leaving NVIDIA was a huge decision, and it was a very tough decision. But at the moment, I just wanted to like learn something that, you know, nobody was doing here from people that maybe had done it before. You know, maybe like experience this whole startup thing. But, you know, like, oh, I have all of these people that trust me. You know, Jensen knows me, and now I'm gonna go to like some place and, you know, like expect that all the same stuff will show up someday. People will trust me, and we'll do great, right? But in the end, I think it has always worked out.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that. The one thing I liked what you said was just try to learn from each and every step. Laura, your final words of advice for all the women out here.
Oh gosh. I would say, I mentioned this earlier, but I definitely, it's about that curious and continuous learning. Stay on top of your craft, stay on top of the business, and network. You know, really branch out, meet new people, get mentors, be a mentor, and just so that you can broaden and diversify your own experiences and learn from others. So that would be my final.
Thank you so much, Laura. Pat, any words of wisdom?
Yes, I would share mine from the coaching perspective is to spend as much time working on who you are as a human being as the human doer that you spend so much time working on. That we can be experts in our field, but if we're terrible people, nobody wants to work with us or for us or around us. And so really, and I think it's some of the hardest work we do because we're programmed young in our childhood by voices around us that we're not even aware of as we grow up. And we often live our lives from stories that we heard when we were children, and we're unaware of them, we're unconscious of them. So I would challenge you to really dig deep into who you're being and your beingness when you're busy doing what we do in our lives, and who are we being as we're doing them, and to spend the time, as was said by both our other panelists, find the things that you're passionate about and be true to yourself, because then your work is easy. There's joy in staying current. There's a natural affinity to dig into the newest research because that field excites you. And it makes all the difference in the world when you start to balance your life and work, and it's just so much more joyful. And I think we stay young and engaged for a lot longer. We don't have burnout the same way. So thanks, Abhijit.
Thank you, Pat. Keep learning. Thank you. That's a great message. Sarah.
Yeah, I'll repeat many of the things that both the other panelists said. So choose the things that motivate and excite you, and sort of like push yourself to go and do the things that you want to be doing. Live with integrity, and that's right. Like you're doing stuff because it's the right thing to do. It's always right. Like how am I supposed to be treating other people? But like, am I in the end, right? Like you have to be able to like stand up and say, yeah, I did all the right things, right? Like maybe all the projects didn't go the right way. There's not everything that you can control, but can you, at the end of the day, right? Like, can you say, right? Like I did good, and I did good for the project, and I did good by my team, and I looked out for the greater value. And then yeah, the burnout part, right? Always sort of like remember you're pushing on so many different fronts, and it's just like long marathon. So figure out what it is that takes for you yourself, right? Like how are you going to be happy, and how are you going to be motivated, and what do you have to do to invest where? And it could be friends, relationships. Don't let that stuff go, right? Like in the end, all of this is important.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really want to thank all the panelists because I think today you have added some value to us. I really appreciate you and thank you for taking the time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the Thank you so much. We'll now move on to the next section. Our next section is a prepared speech by Soumya. Before calling Soumya, let me call upon her evaluator, Megan, to share the purpose of Soumya's speech. Megan?
Thank you, Abhijit. Soumya is giving her evaluation and feedback speech. The purpose of this project is for her to give a speech, get feedback, apply that feedback to her speech, and give it again. Additionally, she needs to give an evaluation herself. And this series of experiences helps us to develop giving and applying feedback. Tonight, Soumya gives her first speech where she'll take my feedback and apply it to the speech to give again. Please welcome Soumya George as she gives her speech titled Up in the Air. Up in the Air, Soumya George.
It was a drizzling cold morning in the month of January. My shoulders were aching due to heavy laptop bag. My legs felt heavy due to the long boots. Still, I regained my strength and ran towards the pilot screaming, "Don't leave, don't leave." Up in the Air is my story of commute to work on a commuter aircraft or a regional jet. 2017, I graduated from UT Dallas and moved to Folsom for my first job in US. Later in 2018, when my husband moved to Bay Area, I had to figure out a way so that I could work from Bay Area. We were already separated for 3 years. At the same time, I couldn't leave my current job due to complicated visa issues. I went to my manager and asked, "Can I work from home? I can visit office like once or twice a year." "What? Work from home? As a software developer, you need to be in an office every single day for work to be done efficiently. Oh, by the way, this was before COVID, where people believed you need to be in office every single day." Seeing my puppy face expression, my manager told, "Well, there is a way. You can fly from San Jose to Folsom every single day, and it takes only 20 minutes." What? Fly from San Jose to Folsom? All I could think was posting on my Facebook page, "Flying from San Jose to Folsom." I could boast to my friends, "I have a flight to catch." I could brag in front of my relatives, "I fly to work." But wait for the catastrophe. After New Year's Eve, me and my husband moved to Bay Area, and I mentally prepared for my first flight to job. I checked how long would it take to reach the airport. Oh, Google Maps said it 20 minutes. Next day morning, I again checked my phone to see how long would it take to reach the airport. 1 hour? 1 hour to cover a 20-mile distance? For someone coming from Folsom, I always translated 20 miles to 20 minutes. I knew my plans were falling apart. I quickly grabbed my breakfast, dropped my husband at the BART station, and got onto the I-80 traffic. By the time I reached the airport, I could see the boarding room was empty. The door to the runway was left little open. I don't know what I was thinking at that time. I ran towards the door, screaming at the top of my voice, "Don't leave! Don't leave!" They saw me screaming and shouting on the runway, and they somehow got me into the aircraft. But it came with a lot of scoldings and warnings. Well, let me close my ear for a second. It still rings in my ears. That day evening, I realized the ugly truth. My commute is not 20 minutes. It's a sum total of many 20 minutes. Over a period of months, I got emotionally and physically drained. But still, I didn't talk to my manager about my situation because sadly, I made a deal with myself. At least I have a job. In order to escape the I-80 traffic, I tried different ways. I started taking Amtrak from Bay Area to Sacramento. And it drained me financially because it cost $70 to reach Sacramento. And then I had to take an Uber from Sacramento to Folsom. Still, I didn't talk to my manager about my situation because sadly I made a deal with myself. At least I have a job. Later, after 1 year, when all my visa issues got resolved, I rescued myself of this hardship by moving to a new job in the Bay Area. But when I think back, I realize the mistake I made. I never communicated my hardship. I never communicated what I was going through to my manager. I could have negotiated with him. Look, here I am traveling every day, and it's draining me financially, physically, and emotionally. There should be some way so that I can travel like once or twice a month. But I never communicated my hardship to my manager. And I learned my lesson the hard way. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Soumya. I totally agree with you. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Everyone, please take a minute to give feedback to Soumya in private chat. Timer, please give me a minute.
I think the chat is disabled.
Okay, let me open it up.
And Tammy's up.
Thank you, Tram. We'll now move on to table topics, which is impromptu speaking. Let me call upon Karen. Karen, it's all you.
Well, Yoshi, it's going to be hard to do table topics after watching you ask all the questions, okay? But I am going to do my best. Now, we seem to have a whole lot of guests tonight, which is super awesome, and I love that. But they may not have a clue what table topics is, so I'm going to do a little brief introduction of that, just so people don't feel lost. So in table topics, I will pick someone. I will ask you a question. And you will have 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question. Do we have a timer here somewhere? We have a timer, and hopefully we could highlight the timer. And the timer will help you understand the 1 to 2 minutes. So the timer will flash a green card when you hit 1 minute. So talk until you see the green card. Okay, just keep going. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, you will see the timer show yellow card. That means you have just 30 seconds to finish up. Then you go till the red card, and you can talk all the way up till the red card. And if this were a competition, you could go 30 more seconds. But once the red card is up, it stays up. So talk till it's green, stop when it's red. It's really not too hard. Now, sometimes in table topics, I might ask you a question that you don't have a clue how to answer. This happens to me all the time. So there is no rule, it's like politics, that says you have to answer the question that was asked. You can strategically modify the question and answer that. So if I ask you a question and you go, I don't know anything about that, feel free to just leverage off and answer another question. That is a skill that's very useful in meetings as well. Now let's see, who should I start with? How about Raji? Can I start with you?
Sure, definitely, Karen.
Awesome, thank you. So here's your question. And we touched on this a little bit earlier. Have you ever felt imposter syndrome? You know, that's when you have feelings that I'm not qualified to do this. Why did they pick me? What's wrong with those people? And if so, how did you navigate your way through it? Raj.
Yep. Thank you so much for this question. I definitely felt that many times, especially because of the uncertainty or ambiguous situations around me, especially in workplace. And I usually end up with all the questions from my higher management where I totally don't have any clue, or at least I wouldn't have at least 25% of the clue of what they want. And why am I being asked those questions, which don't belong to me in the first place? And of course, maybe lean management style or the situations. I always think that it is not a good platform for me to straight away say, I don't know, or I don't have any idea. I would say, okay, I understand your question, but I might need some time to go back and see what can I do and then come up with answers. That's what I have learned from my past experiences, that this is the best strategy. But before I got to this conclusion, there were many awkward situations where I would stare blank, thinking, what should I say? Or how should I start? And I would say barely something like what happened in the past, and I would call upon one of my colleagues or maybe the manager whom I'm reporting to help me there with the context. So after a few trials, I understood that for everything, we don't have to panic. We can just take a moment and say, okay, give me some time. There are a lot of things in my plate. Maybe I'll go check and report to you back later. So that's the learning from the challenges that I've faced. Sorry about that.
All right, absolutely excellent. I really, really appreciate your honesty in this. You know, sometimes when we're vulnerable, we really attract people to us because they're like, oh, that's a real person. You were very real today. Okay, next question. Heather, are you there?
I'm here.
Heather is there. All right. Heather, I would like for you to share a story with me where you have come to the aid of another woman at work.
I would be happy to do that. You know, I think one of the things that happen as you're older is you find yourself in situations with younger women in meetings who may lack the confidence that you have. So I found that it can be quite encouraging for them to find their voice by helping them find their voice and interjecting and not taking over, but potentially asking some additional questions, pointing out some clarifications and things that need to be made. So I work in a small company. I've worked in large companies. And I often find with a lot of the young girls that are under, say, 30, they're looking for their voice. And there's a young girl in our marketing group. She's absolutely fantastic. She's very talented, but she is a bit shy. And so I also work in a male-dominated field, as I'm sure everybody here does. And as a part of that, I find that with shyness, sometimes women in particular have learned not to speak up, or if somebody speaks over them, they get quiet. And so what I try to do is I try to encourage that. They continue what their thought is. They continue the path they were going. If somebody, especially if a male interrupts, I might actually say, I'm not sure if Sarah is done yet. Why don't we hear her out and let's hear, let her finish what her thought is. And then I'd be happy to have you add to the conversation as well and get everybody's thoughts on the table. So that way it's still inclusive to everybody that is there, but it encourages Sarah, which is the meeting that we had yesterday, to finish her thought, to know that it's okay for her to finish her thought, and to interrupt and interject if somebody interrupts them, to let them know that she's not quite done, but she would love to finish her thought, share her ideas, and then open it up for more Q&A. That was my story.
Thank you, Heather. That was brilliant. And it is true that women are interrupted 3 times more than men. So it really helps when we stick up for each other. It helps a lot. Let me see. Jennifer? Are you there?
Sure, this one? I think.
Awesome. Thank you. This is a fun question. How do you stay grounded, and what are the ways that you take care of yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. How do I stay grounded, and how do I take care of myself? I like to stay grounded by, I find one is attending, talks like this, like just coming into a community and hearing, like, I feel like just hearing these types of concepts and with different voices, different perspectives, but they all seem to always coalesce around some of the same core concepts. And so I like attending, communities like this, because I keep hoping that maybe one day it'll click, like something will finally sink in after hearing it, all this exposure from all these different, avenues and perspectives. And I found that, I've been at this, working in industry for about 10 years now, and it really is working. So like I find that I'm finally internalizing some of it. So I really appreciate everyone, everything that's been said here and what everyone has shared. And then the way I take care of myself is I'm pretty, I've, developed, I guess the discipline or the need that, shutting down on the weekend in terms of like closing my laptop, turning off my work phone and making space for myself on the weekend, so that I do have time to kind of, recharge and not think about work for, a day or two. And So I would rather like kind of really hunker down during the week, get some things done so that I do have that free time on the weekend to give myself some space to breathe.
Super awesome, Jennifer. It is so important for us to recharge. In fact, if you look behind me, I think many of you might recognize what that is. And that's where I was 10 days ago. So it is so important for us to recharge. Let's see who next. Pamela, are you out there? There she is. Don't forget to unmute. What career advice would you offer yourself if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were 25?
The career advice that I would offer myself is to learn a set of skills that you can use and apply anywhere. I think that would be the advice I would offer myself. I think languages are also a good set of skills and to have, but there's other skills that you can learn as well. And that is very much something that I wish I would have known when I was 25 and that I had put that into use. But having said that, I'm happy to say that what I've learned more recently is the importance of being a lifelong learner and not to worry about things that I don't know, that they can be learned, that it's just a matter of applying myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pamela. And you know, nobody goes unloved by me. So Priya, now you didn't think I would pick you, did you? Gotcha. Sorry, it's the only fun I ever get. How have you built your confidence during your career, Priya?
Thank you for the question, Karen. Confidence is the most essential aspect for growth in career. When you're asked a question, even if you know only 10% of the answer, if you answer that with 90% of confidence, you would have traveled far more than saying, I don't know. So I would say, take the leap of faith, add sprinkles of confidence and go for it. You can do it. Tell yourself every day in the morning, I'm going to make this a successful day for myself. I am going to brave the fight, brave the challenges that come in my way, handle tough colleagues, build good relationships with the ones that value me, and ignore the aspects of people that I don't like. And be on the positive side of the day, every day, all day. Keep telling yourself you are the best version of yourself and you will win. So that's my mantra for confidence. So confidence is key to everything. Keep that true to yourself. And at the same time, confidence with integrity goes a long way. So women, we can do it. Let's break the bias and go out there. Let's do it. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, Priya, that was it. That was really good and inspiring to boot. Helen, you didn't think I'd pick you either, did you? Sorry. Can you share a time when you have become so discouraged that you wanted to quit your job? What did you do?
Thank you, Karen, for that question. I've had a few jobs that required fairly complex teams working together. And it's interesting when you're leading a project that everyone has their own kind of breaking point when they just have reached the thing like, I just can't do this anymore. But luckily, in these projects that I was leading, we all had a different day when we fell apart. Because once we fell apart and just threw everything down on the floor and just said, I can't do it anymore. This is crazy. We'll never get accomplished. The deadline is not even feasible. How can they think that we can accomplish this? We all looked at each other and just laughed out loud because we were all feeling the same way. And sure enough, the very next week, it wasn't my turn to fall apart, but it was someone else on the team that started falling apart, taking the same rabbit hole, expressing the same frustration, and we all looked at each other and just started laughing. And that's how we got through some of the toughest jobs, some of the toughest experiences. And it all had to do with reshelving an entire library from Dewey Decimal System to Library of Congress. And I won't bore you with the details because you'll probably think I'm totally crazy, but we did it in record time. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, Helen, that was awesome. And it's a process for women also often to hold each other up because everybody has a crappy day. And sometimes you just need somebody to lift you up and say, you know what? Who said it? This is not life or death. Nobody's bleeding to death. You know, you're gonna make it. And I think that's so important. I think I have used up all the time that I was allotted today. So I think I will turn it back over to
Thank you so much, Karen.
Abhijit.
Thank you. Let me call upon our evaluator, Megan, to evaluate Soumya's speech. Megan?
Thank you. Thank you, Abhijit. And Soumya, thank you for your speech. I am going to share with you where you excelled, one thing you can work on, and one challenge to reach for the stars. In this terrific speech, you excelled with your opening. You set the scene with your husband and you coming to the Bay Area. You gave us details on this transition point in life, so we knew we were going to go on an interesting ride with you. Your body language was great, from the backpack on the shoulders, trekking, being separated for 3 years, how you leaned in, and likewise was your vocal variety effective. Being separated for 3 years, you lowered your voice and matched your body language. That was terrific. Also, what? Work from home? A great little humor moment and great use of voice to get that, because we all remember when that was not possible. Also, your diction was great. Puppy face expression, boast, brag, sum total of many 20 minutes. You also used props well, and referencing using your phone for Google Maps. And I loved when you said you made a deal with yourself, at least I have a job. And you kept repeating that. That was great. And your lesson was terrific. We all appreciate this lesson of not having communicated your hardship and how we can do that. So let's look at one thing to work on. This is one thing you can dive in deep for your next delivery, and that is the use of pauses. You had over a minute to spare, which means that you can use pauses for transitions between sections of your story, and also to set the scene and then tell us what the problem was, the commute. You can use a pause there. You took us on a ride with your story, and pauses are kind of like that part of the roller coaster that goes up when it's slow. That's when we all chat with each other and we laugh before we take a deep breath and go down a big hill again. So you can use those throughout your speech to control emotion. And let's see, the challenge. So this is something you would start to dabble with as a goal to elevate your future speaking skills. Your message is that you want us to communicate. Your title is up in the air. So there are many ways you can get us to walk away with that lesson. One was giving a possible solution, which you did, of traveling a few times a month rather than daily. One was to directly touch on it earlier in the story and throughout, and maybe think of thoughts floating up in the air. Maybe they went up in the plane with you instead of being spoken and becoming grounded to be dealt with. And one is to ask a question to take away. Where can we communicate more clearly? Or you would say, where can you communicate more clearly? So there are lots of ways of doing that. Fabulous opening. Your delivery was great. Diving into pauses and sampling with how to sprinkle your message throughout will be great. Great job. We look forward to hearing it next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for that helpful evaluation. I really want to thank a lot of people. First of all, I want to thank Sarah. She was helping me with the questions during the panel discussion. The questions were changing as the panel was going on. The order was changing. So it was very live. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. Then I really want to thank Priya for helping me with the questions. Thank you for taking the time to do the introduction. I really appreciated that. And thank you, Megan and Helen. Your inputs were very helpful for us. I really appreciate that. And Helen, for putting this meeting together. I want to thank all the role bearers, Karen, Tram, Megan. Thank you for taking the roles. It really helps, makes the impact. I will now give it back to our president.
Thank you, Abhijit. Since we started 2 minutes late, I told myself it's okay to go a little bit over 8:15. So thank you all for joining us today. We had a wonderful discussion about setting priorities, being true to yourself, building confidence, taking the leap of faith, and our panelists really charged us up for the coming weeks and the coming months, I'm sure. So let's all be motivated and get this done. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time in this weekday, and I'll give it back to you to go back to your regular routine. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thanks, everyone.